Let me see. Let's start. Hare Krishna, my dear devotees. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. And the Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so today we are in the second chapter in verse 15. Yam hi na vyatyanti ete purusham purusarasava dharmaduka dusukam dhiram so mritavaya kalpate. And it says, O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Very nice verse. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnashram institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the renounced order, sannyasa, is a painstaking situation. But one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyasa order of life in spite of all difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to sever family ties, family relationships, to give up the connection of wife and children. But if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulty, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as a Kshatriya, he is advised to persevere even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly beloved persons. Lord Chaitanya took sannyasa at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife as well as old mother, had no one else to look after them. Yet, for a higher cause, he took sannyasa and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bondage. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And this is, of course, second chapter, 15th verse. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who's not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Well, this ability to what you would call have patience and tolerance and not get disturbed by too much happiness or too much suffering is the sign of a, a person who's on the fast track to understand their relationship with God, with Krishna. Most people get exhilarated and more or less forget Krishna when they become, let's say they win the lottery. They all of a sudden they have 100,000 dollars in their pocket. So they sort of forget Krishna. They celebrate. They drink champagne and so forth. And someone who is down and out, hardly has any money, is scraping by, check to check, as they say, is having a hard time. So if a person is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both, is certainly eligible for liberation. That means they don't forget Krishna because they're very successful, and they don't forget Krishna because they're suffering a lot. Either way, that means they're ready for liberation. Now, it's easy, let's say, when everything's going all right and plenty of money and so forth, to remember Krishna. But if there's too much money and too much sense gratification, then you forget Krishna. And when you're struggling to make ends meet, you sort of remember Krishna. But if there's a lot of suffering, then you also forget Krishna. Why is this happening to me? This is all. If Krishna exists, then why is he making me suffer so much? I'm not going to believe in Krishna anymore. However, anyone who is steady in his determination for advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. So notice it says onslaught of distress and happiness. So both of those things can, what you would say, derail someone from being Krishna conscious. Derail means, you completely lose your balance or your faith in Krishna because either you're really happy and enjoying sense gratification, or you're really sad and suffering. Both ways, you have a good chance for getting Krishna. Therefore, we have to be immune to happiness and distress by taking full shelter in Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The Mahamantra can solve all problems, whether it's distress or whether it's mundane happiness, all problems, you might be very sick, all problems can be solved by chanting. Now, some people will say, well, I have terminal cancer, how can chanting help me? Well, it can help you in many ways. If you take it seriously, you might be able to become cancer-free. And if you're going to, and if not, then you can remember Krishna at the moment of death and go back to Godhead. Either way, you're benefited by chanting Hare Krishna. You're never a loser when you chant Hare Krishna. And anything you do in Krishna consciousness becomes a permanent asset. So let's say in this life, we only do 10% Krishna consciousness, and the other 90% we do nonsense. Well, if you leave your body, first of all, because you did 10%, even 1%, you get another human body at least. And you start from 2%. You don't start from zero. Whereas in the material world, if you only do 1% of a job, you have to start all over again, next job. So in Krishna consciousness, you cannot be a loser because whatever you do becomes a permanent asset. We should take advantage of that, let's say, that mercy that Krishna is showing his devotees, that you can never be a loser in Krishna consciousness because whatever you do becomes a permanent asset. Nahavikramanastasti pratijayana vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya chayate mahato bhayat. Anything you do in Krishna consciousness becomes a permanent asset and saves you from the worst fear. What's the worst fear? Let's say in this life, someone's a human being, but they don't engage in any Krishna consciousness in their whole life. Next life, they become an animal. So that's that's the worst thing that can happen to, you know, human being is to go back into the animal kingdom. Then they have to wait hundreds, thousands of years to come back to be a human being. Okay, but even if you do a little bit of Krishna consciousness and then leave your body, you're guaranteed at least to have another human body. And whatever you did do in your previous life, you start from that point. So if you did 2% of Krishna consciousness, you start at 3%. So we should understand all these benefits, and these are benefits, great benefits. Okay, so Prabhupada says anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. So what does he mean by onslaughts of distress? I hope we can understand that. But then he says onslaughts of distress and happiness. Yeah. So let's say you win the lottery, all of a sudden you have, $1 million. So, all of a sudden, your relatives or friends or maybe were ignoring you. Now they all show up at your doors. Oh, so let's say, congratulations. Yeah. You become an important person overnight because you won $1 million in the lottery. But basically, all those people that are coming to see you, they're all vultures. They want to get some of your money. Right. Oftentimes, people that win is uh, you know, uh, lotteries, in a couple of years or even shorter period, they lose it all. You know, so many people come, and they say, "Well, I can help you invest your money. You can triple your money and things like that," and they cheat you. Yeah. It's all greed. It's all based on greed, and um, a person should be satisfied with whatever they have, whatever they get easily by the mercy of the Lord. You don't need to be rich to have a good life. Uh, you can just be satisfied with whatever Krishna is giving you and live peacefully. Uh, and then, if you're destined to be rich, well, you'll get it. And if you're not destined to be rich, as long as you're following Krishna consciousness, you always have some prasadam. You always have a place to sleep. You can always be engaged in devotional service. Okay, so it says here, but one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyasa order of life in spite of all difficulties. Now, how do you adopt the sannyasa order of life? Well, you can do it by following all the regulative principles strictly. So you might not have saffron cloth and be considered you might be a married person, but still you can be sannyasi by being completely renounced, living like a renounced person. No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and so forth. And regularly following all the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, it's as good as being a sannyasi. And women can be sannyasis also by following the regulative principles strictly. So sannyas is not a rubber stamp. It is a way of life where you become accustomed to being very, let's say, very renounced and being happy by being renounced. Okay? It's not that you're renounced against your will. but you're willfully happy to be renounced, then you become a sannyasi also, because you're living like a sannyasi. Sannyasi is not only a title, it has to be earned by acting correctly. So whoever is happy having a simple, renounced life and following all the rules and regulations, they're basically a sannyasi. But if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path, meaning severing family ties, all those things that a sannyasi has to do, if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as a Kshatriya, he is advised to persevere even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly beloved persons. Lord Chaitanya took sannyasa at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife as well as old mother, had no one else to look after them. Yet for a higher cause, he took sannyasa and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bond. Now, someone would say, "Oh, well, no, wait a minute. Now that's that. He left his mother and his wife, and she was such a young lady, and oh no, this is not right." They'll say that this is not right, but you should hear what they say, the mother and the daughter. Did the mother and the daughter, did they try and sue him or something? No, they were perfectly happy, and they were very Krishna conscious, very, very Krishna conscious, and they went back to Godhead. So you always have to get the opinion of the person that's a so-called sufferer. The wife of Lord Chaitanya and the mother, they did not protest. They were very Krishna conscious, and they had a full life, and they went back to Godhead. And Lord Chaitanya was able to do great good by taking sannyas and then spreading Krishna consciousness all over India. He went, from North India to South India to East India to West India, everywhere, chanting Hare Krishna. And many, many people took up Krishna consciousness. Okay, so if there are no questions, or if there is a question, you can ask it now. If there are no questions, then we'll go on to text 16. This is one of my favorite verses.
Any questions on the 15th verse online?
I have one question.
Yes.
When was Lord Chaitanya on this planet Earth?
500 years ago, approximately.
Okay.
Yeah. So 500 years ago, life was different 500 years ago than it is today, but the same problems were there 500 years ago as there are today.
So, Maharaj, I have one question.
Yes.
Here in the purport, it says, in the Varnashrama institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the renounced order, sannyasa, is a painstaking situation. But you said happily.
One second.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Subi. Sorry, go ahead.
It states painstaking situation, right, Maharaj?
Yeah, you have to leave your mother, you have to leave your wife, you have to leave your children. But usually, the wise thing is to wait till your, you know, your dependents are taken care of, and then, with their permission, you take sannyas. That's the normal way. Uh, you can't just abandon your wife and your mother and things like that. They have to be taken care of. Otherwise, it just would create havoc in society. As soon as you have an argument with your wife, you say, okay, I'm taking sannyas. Prabhupada didn't like that at all. You know. And then, what do? They take sannyas, then they fall down and get married with somebody else. That happened a lot at one point. Then Prabhupada said, I'm not giving sannyas to anybody anymore. Yeah. So, we can't become a laughing stock, by uh, completely violating the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. We have to be serious, not to be a laughing stock. Okay. No other questions?
Even though it's painstaking, but it is done happily, right, Maharaj?
Well, uh,
Being very
some
devout.
people it's painstaking. Other people are happy, that they took sannyas. It's a decision that you have to make, uh, you know, with a lot of, let's say, dedication to Krishna consciousness. It should not be oh, I had this argument with my wife, so I'm going to take sannyas. Prabhupada never accepted that. I was very upset when people were doing that. When the right time comes and the wife is taken care of and gives her permission, then the husband can take sannyas. But just because they have an argument, he said, well, I'm taking sannyas. That doesn't work. Okay. So we'll go into text 16. Nasato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sata ubayor apidristo nadas panayos tatvadarsabihi. That's one of my favorite verses. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance. And of the eternal soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature. So this is a very nice verse. And the purport says, there is no endurance of the changing body. In other words, your body is not going to be there for eternity. Everyone's going to die. That the body is changing every moment by actions and reactions of the different cells is admitted by modern medical science. And thus, growth and old age are taking place in the body. But the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever changing and the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalist and personal. In the Vishnu Purana 2.12.38, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes all have self-illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotimsi. Jyotimisi, yeah. Vishnu, Bhuvanani, Vishnu. The words existent and non-existent refer only to the spirit and matter. That is the version of all seers of truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the reestablishment of the eternal relationship between the worshiper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. That is a fantastic statement. It has very, very big meaning. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. Obviously, the part is going to have many of the same qualities as the whole, or the Jiva is going to have many of the same qualities as the Supreme Personality Godhead, because we all come from the Lord. And Jiva has 78 to 80% of the same qualities as the Supreme Personality Godhead. That's a lot. They don't have in the same degree or the same amount as the Supreme Personality Godhead. They have, much less, let's say, intensity of those qualities, but they have those qualities. So it says here, this conclusion, by nature, the body is ever-changing and the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalists and personalists. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes all have self-illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotimsi, Vishnu, Bhuvanani Vishnu. The words existent and non-existent refer only to the spirit and matter. That is the version of all seers of truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the reestablishment of the eternal relationship between the worshiper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutras, as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entities belong to the superior nature as it will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the Supreme, and the energy or Lord is accepted as the subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance. And to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time. Very nice purport. Okay, so we're near the end of our time. Are there any questions or anything that we should discuss?
Yeah, this is kind of the first instruction, which also gets reaffirmed again in the 7th chapter, that the living entities are made of both the matter and the soul.
Well, yes.
And it's clear that anything to do with the body, there is no longevity, there's no endurance.
Yes.
Maharaj,
So-
why did they use the words existent and non-existent refer only to spirit and matter? So why is matter non-existent, Maharaj?
It has no duration. I mean, eventually it's going to disappear. Matter goes in those two phases. It's manifest and unmanifest. When it's unmanifest, it's still existing, but you can't see it, and it's not functioning. It's not, moving. Let's put it like that.
But it is still existent, right? Even if
Yes,
it's not.
yeah, it's existing. It's eternal. And matter is eternal, but it goes through two phases: existence and non-existence.
Non-existent, as in like.
Well, say it's visible and then it's non-visible, but it's eternal. And the soul is always is also eternal, and we can't see it with our eyes, but we know it's there because there's consciousness. And matter, see, the soul is not an advanced stage of matter, and that's what the atheists say. At some point, the combination of matter makes the soul, but that's not true, and they have no proof. There's no experiment that's ever manifested that. There are a whole bunch of things that they claim is science, but they've never proven it with an experiment. So, for example, if they say that I have to think about that in a minute now. Well, let's say that they say there's no soul. There's only matter. And if there is a soul, it's made of matter. Well, where's the experiment to prove that? They've never made an experiment to prove that the soul is made from matter.
If one can understand the nature of supreme by thorough study by one.
Very important statement. Very important statement.
Except the Jiva has 70% of God.
78.
78. But in limited quantity.
Yes. So if you study yourself, you'll understand up to 78% who Krishna is or God is. Like, for example, if someone lies to you, and right away you don't know it's a lie, but after time you learn it's a lie, and then you become upset. Why did you lie to me? So in the same way, if we lie to Krishna, Krishna becomes upset, right? So there are many things, up to 78% qualities of Krishna we can understand by examining ourselves. Yeah. Yes. If you have one friend always brings you some present, you have another friend that always is trying to take something away from you. So which friend would you like? Yeah. One second. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
You want to wrap up the class?
Yeah, we can stop. Well,
Hare
that's
Krishna,
just,
any other questions or comments for on classes topic today? If not, we'll end the session for now.
Hari
Great.
Bol.
Thank you. Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.